Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I am Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with Mish Shedlock, and someone who I've looked up to for years, who has just covered the economy, finance, the world as we know it through another lens, or should I say no lens, no filter, unlike the mainstream media, which seems to have this massive bias. Some people just call it like it is, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that about Mish. Mish of thestreet.com. You can find him with his Mish talks and his links and just covering the economy and finance. And you're going to get a good dose of who he is today. If you don't already know, Mish, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
A pleasure to be on Crush the Street, Ken. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, Mish, I asked you where in this pre-interview here, where you're based out of, and you had an interesting answer. So you're in Southern Utah at the moment from Illinois. So maybe share with us a little bit about this.
Well, there's a big exodus going on in Illinois, and I would encourage people, if they can, to leave. Some people can't for family reasons or other reasons. Just to give you an example, we had a house that's worth about $400,000 roughly in Illinois, $15,000 a year in property taxes, just for the benefit of living in Illinois. Now, we paid over that $440,000 20 years ago for the house. So no appreciation and $15,000 a year every year in property taxes. So do
Wait
the
a minute.
math on
Why
that.
no appreciation? That's totally not what we've been seeing, even in California, where we're seeing a massive exodus, which is kind of crazy.
There's a few states like that. Illinois is one. I think New Jersey might be one. I'm not sure. But Illinois and New Jersey have some of the highest property taxes in the nation. And then you add in winters and you add in politics from Chicago. Uh, Taxes in general are kind of crazy. Um, Illinois has something called home rule districts, and Illinois has the most home rule districts in the nation. So Chicago, so in addition to Illinois taxes, Chicago could add on some, county could add on some. You get the idea. The local bodies get to add on theirs. People are trying to escape Illinois, and hey, I succeeded. I'm in Southern Utah. I'm loving it.
Well, good for you. And it kind of reminded me of what we're seeing here. I moved out of California to Texas. Now, I picked Austin, a suburb of Austin, North Austin, a city north of Austin. And we all like to say it's South Dallas, even though we're 3 hours south of Dallas. We just don't like to associate with Austin. But my goodness, in just the 2-3 years we've been here, downtown Austin has turned into an absolute shithole. We hadn't gone down there very much, but we were down there, and the homelessness that we are seeing is just, I was beside myself. It wasn't even like a compassion thing. Lines of tents in the most beautiful areas of the city, overlooking, like, the condos next door were $1 million views of the river and the hill country, but you have just 50, 60 tents all there. And I was just beside myself. Like, it's just backwards politics. And it's almost like, to spite conservative values, Democrats have to take the equal and opposite side. And, I know, the right and the left and, is not always just good and bad and whatnot. I mean, I don't mean to get into that too much, but I certainly don't align with leftist policies. And just what we're seeing in these, liberal states and liberal cities, it's just destroying our country. And I saw it happen quick, overnight, almost, in Austin, because the rest of Texas is sending their homeless here. It's like a vacuum for the rest of the state, and it's being destroyed.
I get it from both sides. I talked about politics a lot. And the thing is, I tend not to like either of them.
Right.
Why? Because I'm
I
a
get that.
libertarian, and we have endless wars, and we have wars on the left and wars on the right. You know, Obama's drone policy was about as bad as it can get, but guess what? You know, Trump never fixed it. These wars go on and on. We've been in Afghanistan for what, 20 years now? It's crazy. So people talk about leaving. You know, Obama said he would get out, he didn't. Trump said he would get out, he didn't. Biden is making noises like he's going to get out, but Biden wants to do it and get the UN involved, and everyone has to agree. You know, guess what? This is the way, and Trump approved it, that you don't leave. You know, you start trying to appease all these groups, and you just don't get out. And that is what the military industrial complex wants. It is exactly what President Eisenhower warned about. It was one of the best prophecies in history was Eisenhower warning, you know, about these military escapades that never end. And here we are, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I totally understand that. I mean, as far as like, the right and left being almost the same. I mean, look at what we've seen in terms of the debt increase under the Trump administration.
It's
In
terrible.
4 years, it's just gone parabolic. And I understand that it's just it's an endless cycle now that I have a hard time trying to exactly quantify as to how it will end. At least in the journey there. I mean, I guess we know how it's going to end, but is it 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road? And what's that ride look like? Because as of now, it's just such a mess with what's going on with the stock market, real estate, gold and silver arguably should be doing better. Um, it's just, you don't know. I mean, it's multifaceted and nuanced.
Yeah, that's the eternal question, isn't it? And, you know, people ask me this all the time. And, you know, I'm always talking about this currency crisis that's coming. People say, well, what's going to look? I don't know. I actually don't believe it starts with the US dollar. Everyone is so US centered. They
Mhm.
look at what the US is doing. They don't look at what China is doing, what Japan has been doing for 2 decades now. My instincts are that it's actually going to start in Japan, but I don't know. We don't know because we can't predict what politics are going to do. I don't think the Fed goes down the negative interest rate rabbit hole like the EU did. There's a very real chance that the EU breaks up. Now, if that happens before there's a crisis in Japan, well, guess what? The currency crisis can start in Germany because Germany is going to have to foot the bill to bail out all the other states in the EU. So literally, it can start anywhere. I'm not saying throw a dart, but Japan seems to be on the leading edge just because they were doing all of these things for decades before anyone else. Now everyone's saying, "Oh, look at Japan." Well, you know, Japan's proved that none of this matters. None of it's mattered yet, sort of. But that gets back to the US dollar. People say, well, why is the US dollar so strong? Well, look at what Japan is doing. Look at what the EU is doing, even though they're not supposed to. And they've got negative rates over there. And so, all of these forces counterbalance each other. At least the interest rates are positive in the United States, right? The Fed's holding them to zero. But the long end of the curve is getting away from the Fed here. We've got interest rates, 10-year interest rates are lower in Greece than the United States. I'm sorry, that's just crazy. So it's when you look at these kinds of things, this is what's actually propping up the U.S. dollar. So my advice to people is always when they say, "Well, why? How is the dollar so strong?" Is don't be so US centric. The average person in the US, or a lot of people in the US, probably can't find Spain on a map. At least the education process, everyone knows where the United States is.
Yeah, it's just it's such a crazy world we live in, and I'm trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? And it's impossible when it's all said and done. What are your thoughts, having watched the economy now for many years, and just your analysis on it and your just insights? What are your thoughts on cryptocurrency and just what we're seeing with Bitcoin specifically? Does it intrigue you as a store of value and an alternative to the US dollar?
Not at all, but I'm the first to admit I've been wrong. I thought the odds of this thing getting to 50,000 were, maybe 10% or something. Well, here we are, right? So but that's the way all these bubbles look. That's the way, to me, I think it's kind of a bubble. But be the first one to say that perhaps I'm wrong. The the people who have done the best in Bitcoin, and we can talk about that, though, are the true believers. Let's say that I was smart enough to get in on Bitcoin early on. I never would have held it. So, it's, people say, well, just go out and buy it. And then the thing goes down 30%. And they say, buy more. Well, if you don't believe in what you're buying, and belief isn't enough, by the way, you still have to be right. Well, let's admit it. They've been right so far. All the Bitcoin advocates have been right. And one thing I will say in Bitcoin's favor, and there are other people constantly bashing Bitcoin. Bitcoin is at least a free market construct. So I like it from that aspect. I never thought that it would succeed this way for the simple reason that I figured that by now central banks would squash it. And there's ways they can do that. And the Bitcoin people tell me, no, it's impossible. But I'm telling you that if the Fed or somebody came and outlawed, and not only outlawed and then taxed existing holdings on Bitcoin, I'm positive it would crash. The Bitcoin people, they have their algorithms. They say, well, that they can hide this. I don't, I don't buy it. I don't believe it. But here we are. I have to say, so far they've been right. So in the housing bubble, which I was talking about, by the way, in 2003, and I actually did time that one perfectly. I called the exact top in I think it happened in 2006. Some people say 2007, but this Bitcoin thing has gone on way longer than I thought. I've done better on interest rates than and on the US dollar than I have on certainly on Bitcoin or the stock market. So I don't think
Mish,
everyone's always right.
yeah, no, and I'm not picking on you for that. I just, curious to hear your thoughts on it. It's always just different opinions and different insights. And I think all of that together gives you an idea of what to expect going forward. But you said something interesting about central banks not allowing Bitcoin to do what we all hope it might do, the people who like Bitcoin, I should say. But what are your thoughts on gold and silver then, having dealt with the manipulation coming from the banks? I mean, we saw what happened with GameStop. Any thoughts as to, you know, what the big money is doing to gold and silver? And do you think there are incentives for them to keep the price down, or manipulate the movement of gold and silver in the markets?
Yes and no, but mostly no. And the yes is literally everything's manipulated. Let's be honest. Interest rates are manipulated. The shares of GameStop were manipulated. Everything was manipulated in the dot-com bubble. Housing prices, the wire loans, it's all one grand manipulation thing, a scheme of some sort. The market makers front run this, front run that, and yeah, they've even admitted, colluding against gold and silver. In the grand scheme of things, I'm not sure that gold is more manipulated than anything else. In a lot of ways, I think it's less manipulated than some things. The so I don't think that there's been this huge success in suppressing the price of gold, and the reason is these guys manipulate both ways. They really don't care whether they make money going up or down. They're
Right.
gonna they're gonna front run this. They're gonna push this in the way, the opposite way their edges are. So the when you look at the cot positions, the commitment of traders reports, and the like, and people say, oh my God, look at this. The commercials are the most net short they've ever been, and whatever these kinds of statements come out, or the commercials are long or whatever. The commercials take the other side of the well, first off, there's actually a couple of sets of the commercials. One set of commercials is the actual producers, the people that own the mines. They mine their gold and they sell that gold via futures, so they are always short. Now, the rest of it is the market makers, who by force have to take the other side of the trade. And I believe they're hedged. And, if they're hedged, then they don't care which way the market goes. Now, I think sometimes those hedges, maybe get a little bit out of whack, but not a lot of it out of the whack, because the commercials have been short gold almost forever. And if if they really and gold rose from $250 to $1,900 an ounce, with the commercials being short every step of the way. If they weren't hedged, they would have been blown out of the water long ago. So, okay, they're hedged. Their hedges get a little skewed one direction or the other, so they manipulate it either up or down. They're equal opportunity manipulators. They don't care if they can make a buck going up or a buck going down, they will. That's the reason why I just don't believe that over the long haul, they've actually managed to suppress gold or silver as much as some of the people believe they have.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate that. And a lot of people have some, not a lot of people, but some people have pointed that out and have that belief as well. But I guess I was just curious, the comment on the central banks not allowing cryptocurrency to do its thing or to destroy it. I mean, you don't think that there is any sort of similar, um, I guess, agenda for them to want to destroy cryptocurrency as they, are quote unquote doing to gold and silver, the banks, I should say.
If central banks ever viewed crypto as a threat to the dollar or the yuan or whatever, I mean, a really serious threat, they would, outlaw transactions in it. Okay. Now, some people claim that these transactions are still going to happen, but you have to have a mechanism to get money into it and out of it. If the Fed or governments sanctioned the ability to do that, the price would plunge. Think back when the Hunt brothers cornered the silver market, for example. And all of a sudden they said, well, no one can buy any contracts, you can only sell. Guess what? And then if you got to sell, you got to pay taxes on it. There was a mad rush. The price of silver crashed. I'm positive that they could do the same thing to crypto, but they won't. There's no reason for them to do it. They won't right now unless they feel threatened by it. I expected wrongly, and this is where I went wrong, is that somewhere along the line, the Fed or the US government would have felt threatened enough by it. I believe that's been my big mistake, actually, is not about what's going to happen, but about a time frame in which it's likely. Now, perhaps it never happens. And one of the best ways it would not happen, actually, is if it never posed a challenge to
Mm.
the US dollar. And if Bitcoin's stable, the more stable Bitcoin is, and the less people that are involved in it, the less likely it is actually for central banks to feel threatened by it. So it's a more of a the more parabolic, and certainly it has gone parabolic many times, only to be followed by these mini crashes, only to go on to new highs. So far, central banks have not been threatened by it. So that's how I see it. I'm unwilling to, place a bet on when that might happen. I think it'll be sudden. In the meantime, I do believe it's a bubble, and I got a general policy to not invest in bubbles. I don't think gold and silver are in bubbles, so that's I like gold and silver.
Yeah. Mish, I want to end the conversation on this topic, and that is censorship and what we've seen, the ramp up in censorship. I see this article here, talking about Trump and this alternative platform that he might start, the rumors that we're hearing. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, we've just seen them start with Alex Jones and go down the line, from there. Oh, the crazy guy, the crazy Alex Jones. People are like, oh, he's fine, right? With nobody cares about him. But then during the election, the White House press secretary got censored. I mean, they went from YouTubers, many of them I know, taking out their channels and removing and deplatforming people and censoring
There,
people. Facebook, you can't say something now without having someone monitoring your conversation. And what are your thoughts on this and where we're headed as a country?
fears on the left, fears on the right. They both want to do the same thing. And make no mistake about it. The left wants to silence the right wants to silence the left. The left has been a little bit more successful here now, just because media is on their side. Um, the but ultimately, let's take Twitter for example. Twitter is a private business. They ought to be able, in my opinion, to set rules and say, well, you can or can't do this. And Trump crossed those rules. I believe it was within Twitter's right to ban him. We have uh, extremely wild stories coming out the other side at the time. I I don't believe the election was stolen. In fact, I'm positive it wasn't. Most of the key Republicans actually will say, this the same thing. Chris Christie, the Wall Street Journal does not support, and they're very right wing, support the idea that the election was stolen. Should Trump be allowed to say it? Yeah, how do you, that's free speech. But should Powell be able to go out and say, Dominion, the Dominion voting machines are fraudulent? No, he just got sued by Dominion. I think she's gonna get her ass handed to her in a court of law. So I think we need some sort of checks and balances. I don't know, where they are, but at least we have right and left. We have Fox News. We have CNN. They ought to be able to set their own policies. Texas was considering the attorney, excuse me, the Texas governor was considering some sort of law, you know, forcing businesses to post the other side of stuff. Now, how does that work? And who gets to determine which side is right? So far, as best as I see, the liberals have had a little bit of an advantage in the media, but at least it's contained. There are voices on the other side. And as long as we have those voices on the other side, then I'm sort of okay with this. But make no mistake about it, like I said, both sides want to silence the other, and that's really a problem.
Mish, I I love how you are above the fray in just so many ways, and you've just been able to analyze what's going on, what's really going on. The childish nature of right politics, left politics. I mean, we're like a dysfunctional marriage of people that cannot agree and get along. So and I really think that we need to get to a point where we do want the best for our country, and both sides need to come together. I know that sounds so cliche, but if you think about a marriage, that's the only way it works. You can't just be fighting and blaming the other side and waiting for them to mess up to just attack them all day long. But that's what we have with media, with just the division in our country. So
I did it both ways. I mean, look at this Iowa election. I don't know if you're in tune with it. There's an Iowa congressional district that twice they've recounted twice. Okay, and the Republican won twice. Okay. The Democrat protested to US Congress. Nancy Pelosi wants to hear this case. They want a third count of this, and they're going to change the rules on this. Fresh on the heels of Democrats being annoyed as hell over what Trump was trying to do, they are doing the same damn thing. And the same thing happens with spending bills. The Republicans want austerity. It's not even austerity. I hate using that word because there's no austerity anywhere in the world, as far as I'm concerned, and there probably ought to be. But the only time the Republicans become fiscal conservatives are when Democrats are in power. The Democrats did not want Trump to the Republicans to kill the filibuster. Now that they're in charge, they're talking about killing the filibuster so they can pass their social agenda. And we need to point out this hypocrisy on both sides. Yet every time I do, I get in trouble either from the left or the right, depending on who I'm criticizing. I'm used to getting it both ways. I'm not trying to make myself out to be a martyr. I'm hardly a martyr here. I was really hard on Trump, but he didn't do a lot of the things that I would expect a libertarian or even a conservative to do. We had endless trade wars. He didn't get us out of real wars. And now we've got Biden, who is carrying on the trade wars as best as I can see. It's just madness. I don't like any of them. That's the best way to sum it. And I tend to attack the person in power. For the last 4 years, it was Trump. For the next 4 years, it's going to be Biden. So, that's the situation I'm in. I call it how I see it. I don't let politics interfere with the position that I have.
All right, Mish. So just last thing, I tend to think that our country is becoming more and more of a shithole country. It's not just swinging right, swinging left, swinging right, swinging left. We are trending. Um, you can disagree if you want, but what are your thoughts just as we close out this interview?
I have serious concerns. I agree with you. I look at what's happening in academia, things you can say and not say, and all of this, and people getting fired for saying all lives matter. It's absolutely crazy what is happening in those terms. I did a post. It's actually my most popular post of all time. And it wasn't on the economy, but it was on Coca-Cola giving training. Their actual training was try to be less white. I'm sorry. That is freaking racism, right? They're telling people to be less white. Actual training at Coca-Cola. They've tried to disavow it, but they've actually admitted that this went on. It's getting so you can't say anything. I have a serious issue with this extreme wokeism that is going on now in the United States that's coming from the left. It is. I don't know how else you can say it. It's coming from academia. It's coming from the socialists, but you accuse them of being socialists and they rail against it. And I got into it on Twitter last week. This guy, came up with his own definition of libertarianism, and he claimed that he was a left libertarian, when to me, libertarians, period, are for small government, small military, minding our own business. And I truly wish that the United States would mind its own business. But here we are, Trump sanction after sanction after sanction after sanction. He tried to kill Gazprom. That's the pipeline going from Russia to the EU under the Baltic Sea. The Biden's trying to do the same thing. Haven't we learned to stop meddling? We're in Afghanistan for 20 years because we're meddling. So yeah, every military empire, and that's what the United States is, has eventually crashed over too much spending militarily. And we are in something like 100, we have troops in something like 174 countries. All of this is not maintainable, along with open borders and free benefits. We've got a day of reckoning coming. Again, I don't know when, but yeah, I certainly have all of these concerns. They're there, and you get labeled a nutcase just for even wanting to talk about it.
Mish, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. And again, I'm a little starstruck that I'm actually doing this interview with you. If people want to learn more about you, the work you do, where can they go and what can they expect to find?
thestreet.com/mishtalk. I'll repeat that again. thestreet.com/mishtalk. That's where you find me. I've actually been blogging since 2003, believe it or not. And I've changed platforms from the original blogger to my own blog. Then I went to the Maven. Now I'm on the Street. But I've blogged every day, literally. Sometimes on Christmas, it's just Merry Christmas. But I think I've written a post every day, at least one, since March of 2003. So I've been doing this a long time. I've had my share of wins and losses in terms of calling things, but you can count on me to call them at least how I see them, and not from a political party standpoint of Republicans want this or Democrats want that. Anyway, my pleasure for being on the show, Kenneth. Check out my blog, thestreet.com, Mish Talk. Thanks.
So good. So good. Well, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the show.
My pleasure.